Chris Jericho returning to WWE on the world's greatest Royal Rumble match honestly is a little bit of a mystery to me. Honestly, there's pay-per-view posters that are out over in Saudi Arabia. These pictures are on there of guys that are making their returns to WWE that we haven't seen in a while. Jericho's honestly is a fun one. And honestly, because you got to think of that story that came out with him being put into the match against The Undertaker. I honestly thought that was something that Jericho might have asked for. Jericho actually talked about it on his podcast. Since his podcast was released, he was taken out of the match and basically just put back into this world's greatest Royal Rumble match, almost like, oh, don't need this anymore, we'll put him back in the Rumble, and when he comes out, we'll try to act like it's a big surprise. To me, this is going to be fun because Chris Jericho, basically, he's done about everything there is in wrestling, and some people don't think of him as a main event draw. They don't think of him as having big matches that matter. I will honestly say that, Jericho has had his ups and he's had his downs with me. He's not one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but he does have a lot of really good wrestling angles and a lot of really good wrestling matches. At times, I find myself really into listening to his podcast. I listen to it sort of hit and miss. I subscribe to it, but every once in a while, my phone says, hey, you haven't listened to this in a while. Do you still want to say subscribe? And I have to hit the button, and then a bunch of shows will pop up, and I'll download like 2 or 3 of them to keep into my little arsenal of hits for me to listen to when I'm getting ready to go to work and things like that. But Jericho left the company after the whole Festival of Friendship angle with Kevin Owens. I think that's when he left. And basically found a place for him to work in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Obviously, a good part of this deal was put together because Jericho was putting together the Jericho Cruise, which I think is going to be coming up in October this year. Where he's going to be hosting a lot of podcasts. He's going to be having his band have some rock concerts. And on there, he wanted to have some wrestling matches. Jericho actually went to WWE as well as NXT, asked for permission to use the people on the cruise, and was actually turned down. For somebody like Jericho to be turned down is pretty much a big surprise to me. But they just didn't think that it made sense for them to put that. So Jericho actually had to go and put together getting ROH wrestlers booked on the cruise. Through there, I think he made a partnership. He made some friends. And basically they saw a place to use him against Kenny Omega on the Wrestle Kingdom show, where basically Jericho showed up, attacked Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega attacked Chris Jericho, I think at a luncheon, breakfast, dinner kind of thing, and they had their match. Honestly, in my opinion, it was the one match I cared about more than anything else on the Wrestle Kingdom show this year. I watched it. It didn't set my world on fire. It was a good match, but it's like not going in the top 10 matches that I've ever seen along the way. He had another match against another guy that I didn't watch, and Jericho has come out publicly and talked about the fact that maybe the New Japan show didn't work out as well as he thought it was going to. He really thought that he was to go there, set the Tokyo Dome on fire, and maybe have a really cool run over there. Turns out he got to sell a bunch of t-shirts at Hot Topic as well as Pro Wrestling Tees, and now he's coming back to WWE. I don't think it's really like he's coming back crawling back to them. I think that I bet WWE told them, go out, do what you need to do, and then when we need you, we'll give you a call. And a lot like when I talked about the Jericho versus Undertaker casket match, I think that this is a lot like that. I think that they just thought this was a good spot to use him. Jericho, who's never wrestled in Saudi Arabia, I think says, hey, I got the day off. I'm not going to be performing with Fozzy. I'll show up. I'll do it. And he'll find some way to get himself over like he always does. I don't think Jericho's going to win it. I think he's just going to be a fun surprise, as, he could be the guy who just shows up, he comes in number 1 and is in the whole match and then just sort of gets dumped out. I mean, we've seen him do this in Rumbles before, so I'm looking forward to see what goes down with Jericho. I'm not picking him to win it, but it is fun to see him back in WWE.